Okay, so we are in a new section, part 5, the language of pain, and we are on chapter 16, a sense of protection. So let me pray. Heavenly Father, we give you humble and grateful thanks that we can gather together in person and online, and that through our time of reading and discussion, that we might be blessed by godly wisdom, that we might learn and we might grow. Bless us through this time, and may it honor you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So this whole section, part 5, I guess we're going to get, maybe a few chapters on pain, but it starts off with a Virginia Woolf quote: "The merest schoolgirl, when she falls in love, has Shakespeare or Keats to speak her mind for her, but let a sufferer try to describe a pain in his head to a doctor, and language at once runs dry." You have any familiarity with that?
Really hard to describe pain. And now they've come up with a scale, 1 to 10, that's pretty common, but even still, how do you pick a number?
Sure. Yeah, and they throw in, smiley faces for kids, and then sometimes a little half sentence descriptor for adults. If 10 is the worst pain you've ever felt in your life. But even that, it's also relative.
Mm-hmm.
It's relative to your memory. It's relative to your personal experience. It's relative to you specifically. We all know people who have different pain tolerances than somebody else. Does that mean they're in less pain or more pain? Is the pain a good indicator or a bad indicator? That's really kind of tricky if you think about it. So when you are taking a physical examination of someone, they break it up to what you're recording into 2 major categories: signs and symptoms. Symptoms are what the person tells you. Signs are what you can observe about them. So a symptom might be, well, my stomach feels real queasy. I can't see that from the outside, but you're describing it to me, and you write that down. Now, if you are really, really pale or really sweaty, or I can see that you're taking really short, shallow breaths, I can observe that as a sign and write it down. So off the top of your head, how would you classify pain, a sign or a symptom?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Sometimes your pain is such that your body shows the signs. Like the man in the painting or lithograph or whatever was doubled over with the pain. You get something in your eye, and your eye instinctively, closes over it. So there are some things where you can observe the pain, but you also sometimes have to describe what it is, especially if it's internal.
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right. You would like to assume that something that serious would be observable and visible, and sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. But there are times where you can look at someone and you can tell they are in physical pain. Maybe the way that they grit their teeth, or they wince, or the whole doubled over thing. That's a real good one.
Out of humor.
Out of humor. That's, oh boy, that's a good one. Out of humor.
What was that one?
She said out of humor, and that's a great one.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Yeah. So there's an actual symptom I remember from riding the ambulance, impending doom. And you're supposed to take it pretty seriously. Like when people just like, I don't know, something's not right. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And you take it seriously because, and it can be very diffuse and very vague, but there's just something about the way our bodies operate that even when we don't know, our body's trying to communicate something important. And isn't that the case for pain that he lays out throughout this relatively brief chapter? So the that initial Virginia Woolf quote about you can't really describe it. The how does a number or a smiley face or a frowny face capture what something feels like? Even the level of pain, depending on where in my body it is, feels totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Like a headache versus a stomach ache. How do you say which one's a 6? Because the pain itself just feels like a different sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's like, what kind of a dog is a cat? Well, it's not a dog, it's a cat. Well, but how doggy is that cat? Oh, well, I don't know, pretty doggy, I guess. This chapter, but this initial quote made me think of it. There's I remember an old Carol Burnett routine, and she talked about what does it feel like to give birth? And she said, well, imagine someone grabbing your bottom lip and pulling hard, and then pulling it to stretch all the way over your head.
I remember that.
And it's I first heard that in the context of someone explaining the concept of pain and memory, that kind of the joke was, if women could remember the sensation of pain, they would never have more than one child. And given birth, I don't know how it dives, but
Totally forgot about it. You just call again to make an appointment.
Why are they calling on your phone?
but I would say that we can remember times where we were in pain, but how do you describe the memory of the sensation? Anybody have a painful memory they're up for to trying to describe, like a physical pain, not I was really sad and hurt, but a time where something hurt and you can try to maybe describe it.
You just I don't know how you describe it. If you have pain and you think about it later, you just remember that, hey, it hurt like the dickens.
Right. Yeah. The actual kind of quality of the pain, the sensation of the pain, we can't really recall.
When I had the severe back pain, I could describe it, because sometimes it was like a stabbing knife.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was a burning pain. Sometimes it was a shooting pain,
okay,
along with maybe the burning pain or the stabbing knife.
Now, if we concentrate, you close your eyes and you can concentrate on the memory of something you've seen, a person, a building, a place, whatever, you can almost visualize it in your mind. I think if I concentrate, I can hear certain sounds. I can think of how a musical instrument sounded. I can think about somebody's voice and try to recreate it in my mind. I can even, kind of recreate smells if I concentrate mentally. Can we imagine a memory of a pain and kind of re-experience that feeling?
One.
Okay.
My first child, I had not had childbirth pains before.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a doctor who was not very gentle.
Oh.
And I had some sedation, but I wasn't.
Not enough.
I wasn't under by any means.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, he heard some words that he did not expect to come out of
Oh
my
dear.
mouth. Oh, I was ready to just shove him in
Yeah.
anywhere.
So if you
Get rid
close
of
your eyes and concentrate, can you like manufacture those feelings? Just a little. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's amazing because that's, probably the most memorable pain of your life, but all we're left with is kind of maybe. I have I've got a lot of painful moments. But strangely enough, my mom's laughing, but one comes to mind that nobody else knows about because I never told anybody. I was maybe a college student, maybe newly married. I forget what it was. I was relatively young, and I had pulled a muscle of some sort, maybe a hamstring or quadricep or something like that. And I had put on a large dose of icy hot on my upper leg, and it migrated. And it migrated upward to parts of the body that should never have icy hot anywhere near them. And before I could do anything about it, it was there. And I tell you what, it wasn't even icy hot. It was capsaicin. It was a new product at the time. And so capsaicin, it was like this analgesic cream like icy hot, the big burning reaction. The whole thing is the capsaicin is the chemical inside the seeds of hot peppers. So I remember getting into the bathtub, desperate to get rid of it. And the pain only intensified. And it got to the point where I was almost delirious in pain. There aren't many times where I've asked for death and meant it. But there was a period of time, and I don't know how long it was. I could say it was an hour long, and it definitely wasn't. But even if it was 10 minutes, that was a lifetime. And I can visualize the bathtub. I can start to imagine, and I can kind of concentrate, and I can try to remember burning feelings. But the actual sensation of that pain, I can't really remember. And even if I try, I think I'm kind of inventing it and sort of making it's like making a drawing of something rather than a picture of something, if that makes any sense. And that's how sort of disconnected we are from something as overwhelming at the time. Like, I'll never forget this. And, I learned a lesson for sure that I have always employed after that. But the actual sensation in that time, and even how do I describe it? It burned. Well, lots of things burn. But it really burns. Maybe that'll be my really. That's how you describe it. I don't know. All right. So this I found this to be a unique chapter in several regards. Maybe the biggest of which was how short it was. And we were talking about that before we started class. And there's definitely stuff to talk about, and yet it felt like much shorter than what we've normally gotten. And I take that as to be more of an introduction to the section than a full topic in and of itself. And there's definitely things to talk about, and there's some stories and vignettes. But as we're starting this new section, gosh, it might even, is that our last section? It might, no, there's one more section after this. But, it's just kind of shifting our gears more than it is, presenting everything in a unique theme. This chapter doesn't start with any kind of story. Like every chapter, for the most part, has a little personal story. Occasionally, it's a personal story about somebody else, like his wife or his parents. And this one Doesn't. So what does this one start with?
The picture that, I forgot what they call it.
Yeah. La colique. The pain of colic.
Oh, yeah.
And my French is terrible, so I don't know if there's letters in there that I should not be pronouncing. So
Mhm.
I don't know if this will come across or not.
Oh, yeah, poor
The
guy.
guy?
We can see that pain.
Yeah, so there's a saw, and there's like these little demons, and they are actively sawing him.
Ooh,
That's a 10, I think.
visualize that.
Yeah,
Ooh.
That's a frowny face on the scale. That's a frowny face, and it is kind of neat though to think if you were to remove the fanciful elements, the giant two-man saw and the demons, like his posture and his figure are just right. And so trying to take somebody who is in a natural posture of pain and then kind of add these elements to describe what that pain must feel like is actually sort of interesting. And we've been talking about trying to describe pain and how difficult it is. So if you've ever had very severe stomach pain, being sawn in half by demons isn't a half bad description.
True.
The worst food poisoning of my life. And I had to fly home during it. And I remember it wasn't that long of a flight, maybe less than 2 hours, but I made a fist and I jammed my fist in my stomach as far as I could and I bent over it. And then that's all I could do just to try to stay in my seat. So being sawn in half seems like a pretty good description.
That part where he talked about creating pain in, I think it was in a classroom situation.
Oh, that was really interesting.
I thought it was.
That definitely was. Now, I do think there's something in the beginning that I thought was a really nice, not like happy, but just like a really interesting thought. Pain is the hallmark of mortality.
Mhm.
We plunge into the world through women's stretched and torn tissues. Our first response, a cry of fear or grief or both. We exit often in one last paroxysm of pain. Basically, your life begins and ends with physical pain. And then there's pain all the way through. I just passed along a meme to somebody yesterday where the doctor said something like, well, you know, what's your pain level, or I don't know. It was funny. Are you feeling any pain? Answer, only the normal amount. Doctor, the normal amount is 0. And then just. Anybody have 0 pain as their normal daily life?
Oh.
I don't.
0 pain may be normal for some people,
I don't know who.
not for everybody.
Yeah.
Constant pain is not uncommon. There's various degrees of pain.
Well, sure. And there's stuff that we live with, and I often marvel at interventions, medical or surgical, even prayerful, that eliminate chronic pain that people have kind of forgotten that they have, or they've forgotten what it's like to be without it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For many years, basically until my grandmother had such a terrible experience, I had a bunch of parishioners who swore they should have had their knee replacements much earlier than they did. Once they had it, they're like, I didn't realize how much pain I had been in. I'm so glad I did this. If only I had done it sooner. And she wound up having a real terrible reaction from it and had a very difficult time. But I had seen it happen so many times prior that the worry about surgery and the pain about surgery, and even when people were, in that early stages of recovery, they were in pain, but they could describe a difference. Like, oh, this is a surgical pain. It hurts, but my leg actually feels so much better. And that was what a neat way to like, oh, that's what life is supposed to feel like. I'm not supposed to be in this kind of constant, chronic, nagging pain. He mentions the word coming from pena, the Latin word for punishment.
Boy.
And how does that strike you?
Well, when you think back about a lot of punishments that are inflicted on people, they're very, very painful.
Sure. Yeah, really any kind of punishment should be eliciting some displeasure, right? Like whether it's physical pain or emotional pain or something. So he starts making the transition after just kind of laying out a little bit about pain itself into what I think this particular chapter is focusing on, and that absence of pain with his leprosy patients. So we do sort of get a story here, full page in. He tells a real brief story about his parents and pulling teeth.
Ooh, oh, yes.
That, and anyone want to sum that one up real quick?
We went along with them into the mountainous area where people didn't come to the dentist.
Right.
And his mother used a pair of pliers and eased the tooth out of their heads.
Sure.
In what I'm sure ended up a very bloody mess.
Yeah.
And he was a child watching this, and it was a big impression on his mother.
Yeah, and you could see these were folks were not under anesthesia.
Right.
So if you have you ever had a tooth pulled or been around a tooth pulling where you were awake?
Oh yeah, just
Okay.
last week.
Okay, so I find them to be surprisingly physical. This happened when I was much younger, and this was kind of a standard course of action. But like, it's not a gentle process. If if you're numbed up, it's not as it's not that pain you might think, but it's not like there's a lot of pulling and yanking and tugging. Those things are wanting to come out.
The noise that they make.
Yeah, well, I remember the one. I remember the sensation of the wisdom teeth coming out, and I had another tooth that was impacted. And one of them, they just broke it first, and then they started pulling pieces. But even, there's just this, if you ever, I don't recommend this for yourself. Go ahead and be under, please. But if you ever see like a video of surgeries, especially like a chest surgery, first time, I've always wondered, when Lou and I were dating, we were very seriously dating. This was about to, we were about to become engaged, and I was visiting her family, and Dr. Ungaro actually took me into a surgery. cardiothoracic surgeon, and I assisted in a double bypass. So it was my job. He convinced the operating room that I was a med student. So my job was to hold the guy's leg. So in a bypass, they were removing veins to use from the leg, and that's what they would use to bypass around a blockage. So that leg has to be held, and like goes over your shoulder, and you stand there for 3 hours and try not to move. So anyway, heart surgery, and I envisioned something very gentle, very delicate, very precise, like, oh my gosh, this has got to be with such incredible time. Man, I mean, they're just, I mean, there's times where it's all muscle. And it's not just getting to the rib cage. I mean, you've got to really manhandle some of this stuff. And not only was it was really interesting. And like I was going to say, I always wondered if he was trying to impress me or threaten me. But you couldn't possibly be awake during that. Not just the sense of the slicing, but I mean, imagine your body just being rocked and pulled and yanked and punched and torn. And it's I mean, oh, it's surgical pain when you recover. Oh yeah, it is. You better believe it is. I mean, that stuff is rough. So anyway, whether it's someone who has undergone a bypass, knowing that they're going to be very, very sore after the fact, even though they were under anesthesia, or these people in the story that without anesthesia were getting their teeth pulled, why would you subject yourself to that kind of pain? And that's kind of the reason I think he uses the story. Why would you do it?
Well, with the teeth, they had obviously hurt before, and they wanted to get rid of it completely.
Right, it was worth it. It was worth it. The tooth was rotten, it was broken, there was an abscess, whatever it was, and that constant unending pain, it's worth flipping and flailing around without anesthesia to get yanked with a pair of pliers, because once it's done, it's done. And you know, even that heart surgery, you go through what you know is going to be a traumatic event for your body, but you need it. You know, the pain you feel after a surgery, well, it's worth it because. But that, again, leads him back to this concept of leprosy and killing the body's ability to feel those painful physical sensations.
There's something in between there that I don't understand.
Okay.
The fakers, I don't know how to.
Yeah.
How they demonstrated their conquest of paint. Well, I don't understand how they could do some of the things that he describes them doing.
Yeah. Like putting pins to their faces and stuff like that. Yeah.
Attaching oranges by a safety pin.
Right.
And then dancing with them.
Yeah. So, has anyone have seen anything vaguely similar to that before?
No.
Okay.
No.
Such things.
Yeah.
You guys know, but you know, Sam and I are of the age, especially in maybe the early 90s, where the Jim Rose freak show was still kind of a thing, especially on college campuses, where people were doing these extreme body modifications. And you can still see oddball pictures today of people who do, like, they've got tattoos, you know, like covering 100% of their face, or people who will have like the whites of their eyes tattooed, or they'll you see any crazy, like they split their tongue and so it looks like a lizard tongue, or they insert things into their body with lumps and bumps or horns or other sort of weird things. I would say there's some element of this same kind of thing. Now, the fake ears, this is typically to show like through a meditative state, you can control your body to the degree that you don't feel painful sensations, kind of like fire walking. But I'll say like, you know, there's a lot of body modification going on right now, just in the general culture. And some of that is, you know, like making your body feel painful sensations. You know, I don't know how you get all these multiple piercings without a choice. Like, I want to feel the pain of having stuff in my body. I don't get it, but it happens. Anyway, so the shifting to the pain and the people with leprosy not being able to feel it, he had several, what I think, pretty interesting little stories about describing that action of pain within a functioning, healthy body. So what are a couple of them that might have stood out to you?
Well, in walking, how your body just very subtly adapts to, you know, maybe too much pressure in one area or what or another, and you're not even aware of it. But he mentioned, you know, you start out walking one way, and by the time you finish walking a couple of miles, you're walking a different way, but you don't even notice it.
You didn't do it on purpose. Your body makes those teeny tiny little, yeah. Well, Sharon's our big walker. Do you experience that?
Yeah, I didn't realize that your foot changes each time you walk. Your toes. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Wow. So.
But if you think about it, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Sleeping too.
Yeah, the sleeping was a big one. We don't purposefully pay attention necessarily to our shifts and slides and tosses and turns. What happens when we don't toss and turn or normally shift at night and sleep?
Bed sores.
Bed sores. People who can't do it for whatever reason, and they develop sores on their body. It's like the worst thing, and yet pretty much the only way to counteract bed sores is to turn people for them.
Yeah.
Shift them around, you know, well, it's been an hour, shift them around. And that sounds like such an odd habit. Don't pay attention to, I mean, like right now, I'm using my normal, very poor posture to slump in this plastic seat. And only because I'm stopping to think about it, I can tell, you know, which side of my body has a little more pressure on it than the other. I've got a little tingle in one cheek. And so, you know that I have very subtly shifted probably 30 times just since we've been talking. But if I hadn't, so if we're ever in a position, riding a car, flying in a plane, you're at a desk, whatever, and you need to move, what happens when you don't?
You get
Stiff?
Or the wind feels like it's asleep.
Yeah, stuff falling asleep on you.
Yeah.
And sometimes the falling asleep is kind of a funny sensation, like funny haha, like it's not a problem, but it just feels weird. And sometimes it hurts.
It hurts.
I've had a weird numb feeling. I've had real sharp pinprick tingles.
Yeah. Tingles.
But all of these little things that our body is always doing, the pain that we maybe don't even consciously notice, but it elicits corrective responses constantly that if they weren't there, it would hugely impact us.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's interesting is it doesn't even register as pain, but somehow the body picks up on those sensations and adjusts.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'll say, like, now that I've talked about it and I know about my sitting, I can feel that, it's not it's not pain like I'm hurting, but just the way that I'm sitting, and I'm a 1 on the pain scale. It's not enough to force me to consciously move. But at some point, we're going to get into talking about something. I'm not going to pay attention to it anymore. I'm not going to be thinking about it, but my body will still shift. And it's just, again, it's just a remarkable little symphony of all these different parts playing constantly that we depend on. So now we do kind of get another little story. His personal stories, instead of being in the front, are kind of interspersed in the middle. And this was maybe the fullest part of the chapter about an experience in medical school. And what was that? He studied under Sir Thomas Lewis, a pioneer in the study of pain.
Oh, yeah.
And so what was his participation in the study like? What did it mean to participate in a pain study?
You were a guinea pig and you got poked and
Yeah.
pricked with hot sealing wax. And
Yeah, it sounds kind of awful, actually.
Yes.
yeah, I quit.
Everything he demonstrated, if it was a prick, he pricked them. If
Right.
it was a stab, he stabbed them. That was.
So you have all these students with bumps and bruises and burns and scars all over their body because, they're trying to gather this data. You're like, I'm gonna put an ice cube in the palm of your hand for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, once I take it out, describe what it feels like. And while it sounds awful, what's the point?
To be able to gathering data.
Differentiate.
Yeah, well, how could that data be helpful?
Differentiate the level of pain.
Okay, differentiate the levels of pain.
Or how you adapt to the pain.
Yeah, not just, you personally, and how bodies in general.
Mhm.
It's one of those things where, well, everybody knows that hurts. Yeah, but we don't know much about it other than it hurts. Can we learn anything else about it? What is the pain like? When does it start? When does it stop? What's the lingering effect? The more you understand it, maybe we can do something about it, or maybe it gives a clue to other processes in the body, and somebody's got to do it. If anything, I think it's sort of interesting, maybe really good. It's the medical students who are the guinea pigs here. How might that be a good thing in particular?
When they're later on in their experience, when they're having to treat someone with pain, what they have learned through that may help them to understand what's going on in the person
That's right.
the patient.
The patient maybe is having trouble describing something, but if you felt something like it, maybe you could put the pieces together yourself. Maybe better equipped, maybe more sympathetic. Not sure, but I think it sounds like there's really good things to this. And, medical students are thinking critically and medically and with a medical precision. So like if you poke me and I say something stupid because that's how it occurs to me, that might not be as helpful as an example as someone with training and background who is very purposefully trying to describe it as objectively and comprehensively as possible. This is worth Googling for amusement at some point. But there is a particular researcher, I don't remember the guy's name, but in his research, he's been the personal guinea pig to establish the pain scale of insect stings and bites. And he'll take video of himself freaking out as some of these insects bite him and trying to describe. And, you know, it both sounds like a goofy stunt, but also, okay, that's actually interesting and helpful information. There are, so apparently the most painful bite in the world, the most painful insect bite, anybody know? It's called the bullet ant.
Yeah.
And I guess it's South America or something, and it's large. And so this guy is describing the sensation of bullet ant. Bullet ant bites can apparently be lethal. So it took research to understand why and how, so that something could be done about it. And what it turns out is it's not the venom of the ant that kills you. It's just so incredibly painful. It overloads your nervous system with pain, and it was inducing heart attacks. And but because they could understand the process, that maybe offers a treatment option, because you actually know what you're trying to treat. It's not, you know, the venom is not acting in such a way that you have to counteract, you know, before it gets to your kidneys or something like that. It's actually, it's just the pain receptors in your body freaking out. But somebody had to do that in order for us to know on some sort of professional medical level, so that something could be maybe done about it.
Beginning of one of his sentences made me think, I thought this before. As I study pain in the human body, I marvel again at the Creator's wisdom. I got thinking about it one day, all these different things that our body is designed to do, and it had to be thought through. Somebody had to have figured all this out. And there's just, it goes on and on and on what God did when he built us.
Yeah,
It's
great.
totally amazing.
Yeah, you know, the near infinite complexity is both mind-boggling, and it has to point to purpose.
Yeah.
Some things are just not able to be reduced down to stimulus response, because they're just too complicated and interconnected. You know, that's you're putting parts in a box and shaking it real hard and finding a watch has put itself together. There's certain things, they just have to operate in only a certain fashion, all in an interrelated manner. There's just no way to kind of make it like one little tiny incremental change at a time. And I think you're right, a lot thinking about these pain things, and nobody seems to like pain. You ask anyone off the top of their head, of course I don't like pain, nobody likes pain. The ethical system of people like Peter Singer, who is a utilitarian, is you know, how do you distinguish what's right and what's wrong? I'm not advocating Peter Singer at all. I think he's a dangerous lunatic, but he's a professor of philosophy and he gets attention. But that is that which is right is that which brings about an overall reduction in pain and suffering. Now, if you think about it, just kind of off the top of your head, there's some sense to it. That you kind of, okay, all right, you know, so if this makes people hurt physically, emotionally, then that's not good. Well, but sometimes there's competing goods, and somebody's going to get hurt one way or another, and then you can kind of measure, is this increasing the overall level of pain, or is it, you know, you trade a little bit of pain but for a lot of good. You know, taking a shot hurts, but if the shot is good medicine, it's worth, I mean, that kind of thing. Well, the problem is that assumes a bunch of things that you can't assume. when you're trying to come up with a fundamental theory. And one of the assumptions is that pain is bad. Is it bad? I would say no. It's important. Important things can be bad, but important things can be good. And at the very least, pain is a necessity because of, you know, what we found out about the lepers. But what about any pain from us? Can we ever think of a pain that was, I mean, it's not pleasant, but you're glad that it happened?
Well, it's letting you know that there's something going on.
Okay?
Heart attack.
A heart attack?
Sure.
Okay? So, and that was a real interesting one as he was laying that out.
I remember.
Of a heart attack that's so interesting.
I remember when I was young, my sister had her appendix burst.
Oh, okay.
And of course, you can see only the pain that allowed the doctor to recognize what had happened. And peritonitis is pretty serious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I remember that event.
Lots of times there's a pain that turns out to discover cancer in an early stage
Sure.
that can be treated.
Sure. My mother-in-law, she was a 7-year pancreatic cancer survivor. And pancreatic cancer has a single-digit 1-year survivability statistic. And the major reason for that is that it's asymptomatic until it's too late. By the time they find it, it's too big, too far gone, it's spread. Mm-hmm. Well, she was having this abdominal pain and going doctor after doctor, and they couldn't find it. But as they were looking for stuff, they found a tumor on her pancreas. It should not have caused that pain, but it gave her and all of us 7 years we might not have had otherwise, because it was found at a time where there was still there were medical and surgical interventions that did a lot of good. And some of these more deadly cancers are as deadly as they are, not because they're necessarily as fast growing or malignant, but because you can't tell you have it until it's too big of a problem.
You said something about a heart attack.
Yes.
Sometimes people will feel a pain in their arm.
Sure.
Or somewhere else that they don't realize what that is indicating.
Yeah, he has a nice little description there of the heart attack, where he talks about, the nervous system basically asking a neighbor to chip in and help out. Hey, left arm, do you mind sending out some pain signals? Well, why? Why is that necessary?
So that they'll realize that something's wrong and investigate to see what it is and find out.
Yeah, the heart doesn't have pain receptors.
Right. I'm sorry.
But imagine if it did. Imagine if the heart was sensitive to the physical sensation of pain.
What would it do to its activity?
Well, I'm just thinking about the fact that your heart is contracting all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine if you could feel the physical sensation, even if it wasn't painful, but of this 24 hours a day? I mean, we would go insane. I just saw something posted, a little picture or something about the quietest room in the world. The picture's floating around. You might see it online somewhere, but it's this, very purposefully, acoustically null room. And it's real interesting to look at, and they've got all the stuff hanging and what the walls are covered in or whatever. But it's so quiet, you can hear the blood flowing and your organs operating.
Oh my goodness.
And that no one has been able to stay in there for longer than 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff that if we were inundated with what's actually going on inside of us, we couldn't do it. And so the heart doesn't have those feelings of physical sensation. So when something goes wrong, now a heart attack is an infarction. It's the loss of blood flow to something that was going to cause tissue death. So a heart attack happens when a blockage supplying blood to the heart tissue itself impedes the heart being able to be oxygenated. And so it can't feel the sort of physical pain. So our body, knowing that something incredibly serious is happening, enlists other body parts. Now, other than heart attacks, and that's kind of classic, like the classic pain in your left arm, which apparently women have to be careful about waiting for because they present differently than men or something like that. Can you think of a time that something hurt, but it was your body was telling you about something else? It was a secondary pain. It was a referred pain.
I think kidney stones, not that I've had one, but don't they radiate somewhat like into your back?
Yeah, for sure. I've heard plenty of stories about kidney pains causing trouble in other spots, causing fevers, causing just all sorts of strange sensations that you wouldn't necessarily think of. I mean, I think of a real sharp pain in a specific spot.
Spleen and has a pain in the left shoulder.
Spleen has a pain in the left shoulder.
Gallbladder radiates to the left shoulder also.
See, super interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, I really liked that that little inside baseball on these referred or secondary pains. I don't think about that. But if some of these internal organs that don't have similar pain receptors, how does our body let us know? But it does. It finds ways. So then he's also then talking about the different measures of pain throughout our body and the different sensitivity levels. The enormously small amount of pressure that gets our eye to close off. Why is our eye so sensitive?
Doesn't have any blood.
Not enough blood vessels to be self-healing, so we're built to protect it more.
Yeah.
But then some things can take a lot of pain. What's a part of our body that we subject to pain constantly and we just sort of live with it? Feet. Yeah, that's a great one. We're always on our feet with the full weight of our bodies. There's other body parts that couldn't handle even a fraction of that. And then there's the kind of paradoxical one, hands and fingers. So what's a good paradox about the pain of the fingers?
We use our hands for so much, and if every little tiny sensation caused pain, we couldn't actually do anything.
Right. Yeah.
And yet we have those pain receptors, especially in our fingertips, that are very, very sensitive.
Yes. So we were talking about musical instruments a little bit last week. If you know anybody who has a lot of skill and experience in a stringed instrument, violin, guitar, anything where you're making physical contact with a string, you will find those people have both thick calluses, but also extraordinary ability to perceive and change the pressure. They have a feel, which it's so weird to me that it's more callous than mine, but it's somehow also more sensitive than mine. But it's that, it's that experience where you can actually train those fingertips to be extra durable, but also extra sensitive at the same time. All right, so he's got kind of a last little story that we can use to wrap up, and it's the cringiest chapter for me. What happens when a person with leprosy sprains their ankle?
They don't know.
They don't know.
Ugh.
And they keep right.
Ugh.
And they keep walking
Ugh.
ahead.
Ugh. I've got bad knees, And my knees have actually been in real good shape for many years now, but I used to be in chronic pain. And I will say as a younger man, like my first job as a rector, I was 27. And it was at a small congregation, much older congregation, but I had osteoarthritis in both knees. And I actually understood the concept of chronic pain firsthand. And it allowed me to relate to some of my folks as a pastor in a way that was different. Like I could have had sympathy, but I wouldn't have really understood. Well, I understood. And believe it or not, my arthritis has been great for 15 years. But I'm sensitive and a little squeamish. Like I can't watch a knee surgery. Don't show me pictures. And well, getting that story of a guy slipping as he's walking, like step off a curb or something. What did he do?
Yeah.
And the ankle just kind of goes right. Now, if that happened to any of us, what would we do instantly?
Fall down in pain.
Probably fall down. You know, we just sort of crumple maybe, depending on how bad it was. And I've sprained my ankle pretty badly several times. And your body just kind of drops if it hurts enough. But even if it's not a catastrophic sprain, we sort of instantly adjust. You know, we limp or we favor it or whatever it is. And poor guy, he just kind of keeps on walking like nothing happened, one foot in front of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens?
Eventually had to amputate it.
They had to amputate it because it got so damaged. I've sprained stuff and I've tried to use it. Like, no, I got to play in this game. I'm going to push on through. And there's like, you can't.
No.
And I imagine someone just sort of like walking off on it. Just that like, you know, bone on bone kind of feel. Oh. And this, whether it's the little tiny sensations that our bodies are always compensating for, or the big stuff where, you know, the left arm is hurting and your body's trying to give you the alarm bells that your heart is in distress, and completely counting on pain, large and small, to protect us, basically. And you lose that, and something as simple as stepping off the curb.
Yeah.
Something you could do at any time, multiple times a day. And suddenly it's going to get so bad, he's going to lose that leg. Ugh. All right, well, it was a short chapter, but I do think there was plenty of good stuff to dig around. And anything else?
I think one of the main things about this whole book has taught me is that despite how awful it can feel, pain is your friend, because it calls attention to something that needs your attention.
Yeah.
And I've tried to look at pain differently now, instead of just being annoyed, hurt, angry.
Right.
Say, okay, what is it trying to tell me? What do I need to do differently?
I like the ending. Pain is often viewed as an enemy. It actually is a sensation of most dedicated, keeping ill up healthy. If I had the power to choose one gift of leprosy of patience, I would choose the gift of pain.
The gift of pain. Yeah. Yeah.
I found too now, when I pray for people in pain, I don't just pray for relief of the pain, but healing that which is causing the pain, so that the pain is no longer necessary.
Yeah. Well, there's some very ancient prayers that reference passages in the Pauline epistles about pain allowing us to share in the suffering of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
There is something purative about some pains, and that though we may not want it, by being given it, what can we do with it other than simply ignore it or eliminate it? What is there something to be learned? Maybe. I'm not going to get into the quote because I think it might wind up getting applied in a different chapter, but it's one of my favorite Mere Christianity quotes from C.S. Lewis, where he says, pain is the megaphone God uses to speak to an increasingly deaf world. You know, a world that becomes hard of hearing needs to be shouted at times. And maybe pain is a way that we can hear because we're not listening. Okay, we good?
I'm good.
All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
See
wait,
you.
hang on. No class next Wednesday. It's Ash Wednesday.
Aha,
Already.
Yep. just-
already.
I know, it sneaks right up on you. All right, but we'll pick up the Wednesday after.
Got that,
Okay.
Sam?
Thank you.
Very good.
All right.
Thanks, Mary. Good to see you.
Bye-bye.